Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this second video. We're going to talk about a couple of things, three very quick topics. The first is how to have an effective mentor-mentee relationship, or how to have an effective mentorship relationship. Second is I'm going to share a little bit about the value and the impact that mentors have made in my life, and maybe a little bit about what I share might resonate for you. Thirdly is what's the value that mentorship, like male mentorship specifically, plays for young boys that are either in middle school or in high school. Right, so let's talk about the first. So how to have an effective mentorship relationship, right? So this is more, now we're gonna talk about it from the view of a mentee. So you're looking for a mentor, right? So one is, you wanna identify what's the area that you wanna have mentorship in. Let me be really clear, I wanna have mentorship. We think often mentorship is just about the professional aspects of our lives, right? I wanna have professional mentorship and how do I grow vertically in my career. But there's also mentorship in a lot of other areas of our lives too. There could be mentorship in how to create like really juicy relationships in our lives. It could be mentorship in how do we present ourselves and how do we develop a personal sense of style. So one is you want to identify what's the area that you want to have mentorship in. Second is you want to make a list of mentors that you'd want to get mentored by, right? Like who's that person that I admire, in that area that's walked a little further along this path or has gotten to a certain milestone that I want to reach, where that person would be an effective mentor for me, right? Third is I want to ask, what am I going to give in return, right? So if I'm a mentee and you're a mentor, of course I'm going to think, well, I don't want this to just be a bi-directional relationship. And I think that's one of the mistakes that I'd made early on in my experience looking for mentors, is I'd say, wow, you've got what I want, can you mentor me? And every mentor is busy. I mean, just like me, they got 100 other people tugging out their shirt, looking to be mentored by them, right? So I need to look at what's the value that I can create for this particular mentor? What can I give in return? So that way, I feel contributed and they feel contributed. And that's just a simple tip, is just to ask, hey, so-and-so, I'd love for you to mentor me in this area. What is it that I can provide for you that would contribute to or enhance, some area of your life? And that's a really great question. A lot of mentors are not used to being asked that question. And then right after that question, I'm sure a mentor is probably going to ask you, well, what do you do? What are you good at? Right? And then that opens up a dialogue for a bi-directional relationship. 4 is you want to create a very set container in the terms of that mentorship relationship, right? So again, another mistake that I made early on is I would go to folks and say, hey, can you mentor me in this area? But it's really important to figure out what that looks like. So does mentorship look like a monthly call for 30 minutes for 6 months? So you want a begin time and you want an end time. Otherwise, mentorship relationships just kind of peter off. And then there's this kind of funky energy in the space, right? And then you're no longer talking to each other as equals. So you want to create a begin time and an end time. And then you want to create a container for that. So does that mentorship relationship look like a weekly 30-minute call, a monthly 1-hour call, every 6 months call? What does it look like? Second is you want to think about a couple of measurements of effectiveness for that mentorship relationship. Otherwise, it's just a great conversation or just a feel-good conversation, right? So one is when you're clear about what's that area, what's the measure of effectiveness in that area, right? So if you're mentoring me in relationships, let's say, because let's say I'm single, right? And I'm a single person, and the area that I want to have mentorship in is finding a romantic, committed relationship, let's say. So an effective measurement of that could be something that we create together, right, in our mentorship relationships. It could look like Parth goes on, 3 dates a week is what that looks like, and then has a deeper level of self-confidence such that it produces Y result, right? So it looks like 5 numbers, 3 dates, like that. So you want to craft the specifics. So one of the things I always like to tell people is specific is terrific. It's not written in gold, but at least it gives you a very clear reference point to let you know whether you're winning the game or you're not. So whether it lets you know whether you're effective or you're ineffective, and then you can look at what has you be effective, so you can duplicate that, and what had you be ineffective, so you can autocorrect and then pivot, right? So that's the next thing, is creating a container for that mentorship relationship. And then last and fifth is gratitudes, right? So as a mentee, you want to think to yourself, if once this mentorship relationship ends, are we going to go back to being friends, or what's the next thing? And then how can I say thank you? And it could look like anything, and you're going to discover that as you move along in your mentorship relationship. Okay, so that's if we talk about the first thing. Second thing is mentors, the value that mentors have played in my life. So real quick, about me is I'm not even a first generation born immigrant in this country. I was born in India. I'm an only child. I'm the only son, right? My parents came here. They worked hard, kind of that quintessential immigrant story. They came here with very little. My dad left a business, actually closed shop on a business to give his family, particularly me, a shot at a better life than being in Mumbai, India, back in the 70s and 80s. So I came here when I was 4 years old, grew up in New Jersey. It was really tough growing up because 1, I didn't speak any English when I came. 2, I had a stutter. 3, I was dyslexic. And 4, I had a lisp. So imagine, here I am, right? And so I had a lot of mentors that believed in me and that knew who I was inside of me to work with me enough to get me to elevate in the areas that I want to elevate in. Right, so I went through a lot of speech pathology classes just to be able to speak the way that I'm speaking, and I, had several mentors around video making, video creation, to teach me how to look at the camera and how to engage with you, right, and how to get my energy across to my eyes. I've had so many mentors. A lot of the mentors in my life, my earlier part of my life, before 25, were particularly around sports. So I had a lot of mentors around, I was a track runner. My coach or my mentor would get me up at 6:30 in the morning. We'd go run drills. I was a mile runner. So I went from running the mile at 7 minutes and 52 seconds to 3 minutes and 47 seconds over the span of 4 years. That's right, 3 minutes and 47 seconds over the span of 4 years. But that was because I had a mentor, I had a coach, I had someone who could push me and who believed in me more than I believed in myself. And someone who I felt safe with, I trusted, and who I relinquished control to. Because left to my own devices, I would just procrastinate and binge on Netflix all day, right? But as I found mentors that I trusted and I felt safe with, to be authentic with, and to cry with, and to share my struggles with, they could hold that space for me, right? And they could push me to the next level, right? So that was really big for me. Now, one of the things that was kind of a missing for me. So, before I go into that, I want to also acknowledge that there are different kinds of mentors. So I've had mentors that are past, and there are mentors that are present, right? And then there's future that I'm going to be creating. So there's past mentors, and these are going to be folks who may not even be in physical body, right? So these are people that you emulate, authors of books and autobiographies that you read, right? It could be, you get the point, right? And then your present mentors are the people currently in your life, right? That might be a generation above or a couple generations above you that you go, wow, these are the people, they've walked the path a little longer in this particular area that I want to walk, right? And then for me, the biggest source, or the main source of male mentorship in my life was my dad. And my dad was really skilled and really developed in certain areas, right? But some of us whose parents were immigrants and came from other countries, they just didn't know what they didn't know, right? And we didn't know what we didn't know. So I remember the kinds of spaces that I would gravitate towards, especially being an only child, would be things like Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and track and football, and things where there was a kind of fellowship of men, right? And right now, masculinity and what it means to be a man, all these things are being reframed and redefined, right? So it's really critical to have kind of these male mentors. The other thing I want to say is that the value of male mentors, let's transition to the value of mentors for young boys. So why is it important for boys who are in middle school and in high school to have male mentors in their lives? So, and this could be debatable, but a lot of the value that a young boy gets from a male mentor is typically within kind of the more masculine domains of our lives, right? So when it comes to discipline, when it comes to structure, when it comes to giving form to your creative process, a lot of these things are provided to you, or people's relationship to money, people's relationship to success, people's relationship to professional acumen. A lot of that traditionally had been kind of emulated by a lot of the male mentors in one's life, right? And there's a certain bond between men, right? Older men, younger men, there's a certain bond, right? Just as women have these bonds, and kind of the wise elder and the young person who's learning and kind of learning to grow and step into their shoes. But when you have folks who are older men for younger boys makes such a big difference, right? So why is it so valuable for middle schoolers and for high school boys? Well, one, it lets them know that they're not alone. Two, there's a certain camaraderie that gets developed when they feel safe around older men who are not going to give them advice, who are not going to try to fix them, who are not going to try to change them, but are just going to accept them and celebrate them for who they are. And asking them, hey, would you like any advice on this? Or would you like any guidance? Or would you like me to share my thoughts about it? And then, the young man gets to say yes or no, right? So there's so much value in that. And that kind of parlays lastly into this project that I'm really excited about. So I recently became one of the core founding members of Boys to Men Bay Area, right? So what we're actually looking for are mentors, men who are like to be mentors to young boys in middle schools or in high school. Basically, we're leading these, hosting these free circles in these high schools as an after-school program for boys, as a container for boys to just talk and share, right? Even, and I'm sharing this a little bit vulnerably, but growing up, like even when it came to body issues, right? Like what do I do with like various things in my body, right? Growing up as a 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, I didn't have anybody to talk to about that stuff. So a lot of that stuff was confusing for me. Puberty was a very confusing period in my life. And then and you throw on the whole like attraction thing, and it just gets really confusing. And when you don't have anybody to talk to as a young boy, all that stuff begins to determine how you're going to see relationships as you get older, how you're going to see women or men as you get older, right? So all of that gets shaped and molded during these formative years. And so, I want to just share also the value of like male mentorship to boys and who are in middle school and in high school. And if you would like to mentor with us, or secondly, you have any connections to schools or educators that are in middle school or in high schools, we totally appreciate that. And then lastly, if you'd like to donate, contact us too. So our email address is down, it's in the comments. It's boystomenbayarea@gmail.com. And thank you for taking